Mm. Hi Tim, yeah, sorry about that. We're just moving it over to Google Meet.
Hey James, yeah, no worries. Absolutely fine.
You all ready for this afternoon?
Yes, I've been thinking about it all morning, so well then let me switch this on, then I'll switch it off again. Yes.
Hiya.
Hi Cameron, welcome. Sorry about that.
That's all right. It's classic technical difficulties. I encounter them every day.
Yeah, I know. It's the joy of being in tech.
Pretty much, yeah.
Hi everyone. I'm just trying to get my camera going now as well. It's been an interesting few minutes. For some reason. Right. There we go.
You're in.
Hooray.
All right. Welcome, Guy, and welcome everybody. I'm excited about this session. So actually, we didn't realize this, but well, I don't know if this is a good thing or not, but Guy and us were educated in the same university. So, you know, hopefully that sets the bar high, I'm hoping. It was the little one down the road from Oxford called Oxford Brookes. It's a little college.
Of course.
So thank you everybody. Sorry about the slight mishap this afternoon, but that's all good. We're ready to kick off. So just introduce Guy. Guy is the founder of a negotiation consultancy called BreakPoint Black. And so the focus and the expertise on using and applying negotiation skills during your sales cycle is obviously critical, especially in SaaS, for success. So his business is literally a consultancy focused on building the advanced negotiation capability for SaaS sales teams and account management teams, and believes in taking a kind of a consultative approach for the full sales cycle. So Guy, I will hand over to you. If you're not speaking, you know, feel free to turn your screen off, and we'll let Guy share his screen and walk us through this.
Brilliant. Thank you, James. I'll just try to get my screen share going. See if we can make that work.
Yeah. That's working.
Ideally, I can choose screens, my second screen, but that doesn't appear to be an option. So in which case we will make it work on here. Give me 2 seconds.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Okay, brilliant. We'll work on this basis. Well, hello everyone. It's a pleasure to meet you all, and thank you for that kind introduction, James. As James said, my name is Guy Johnson. I'm founder of BreakPoint Black, which is a specialist negotiation consultancy. And over the years, we've started to really specialize in the SaaS sector. There is no skill set that can add more to your bottom line and that can allow you to get more from the deals that you're already doing than the skill set of negotiation. And unfortunately, negotiation is not an innate skill set. It doesn't come naturally to people, despite what some people might tell you. It relies on process, it relies on method, it relies on careful control of behavior. So it's a skill set that can be taught. It's a skill set that needs to be learned by doing. And that, of course, is why all of our programs are based on experiential learning. But today we're going to explore some of the concepts of negotiation, some of the principles that underpin it all. And it's these principles that we've been teaching to lots of firms in the tech sector and the SaaS sector. And I'm looking forward to getting into with some of you today over the next 45 minutes or so. So by the end of this masterclass in negotiation, you will have reviewed and applied the core principles of negotiation. So we're going to be really looking at the principles that underpin all facets of negotiation, a universal set of core principles. And we're going to start exploring how these principles apply to your personal world, your commercial landscape in SaaS, in sales, it might be account management, depending on your role. And by the end of the session, you'll have 10 things to take away and think about ahead of your next real negotiation. So what is negotiation? Well, we've got a definition here for commercial negotiation, because of course it's commercial negotiation that you're primarily engaged in within your roles in SaaS. It's where the buyer wants to buy and the seller wants to sell, and the basis of the business needs agreeing. So what are we really saying here? The buyer wants to buy. So that demand has already been created. The buyer already wants to buy. So we're not talking about the sales process. We're talking about negotiation, which is about resolving some of those interests which are aligned, but some of them which are not aligned, and resolving those differences. It's the basis of the business which needs agreement. So our job as negotiators is to get the best deal, not just to get a good deal or to hit some kind of target or KPI or objective. It's to get the best possible deal, which is defined really by what the other party is able to give us. It's our job to extract every piece of value that we can from that deal. So if we're saying that the buyer wants to buy, as I said, that demand has already been created, it stands to reason that some form of effective sales or sales process has already occurred to create that demand. There's a fundamental core difference between selling and negotiating, and we have to understand that difference. It's very important. So what is it that salespeople do to generate that demand? Salespeople, of course, persuade, rationalize, sometimes argue. They're focused on convincing the other party, justifying, qualifying, explaining, perhaps teaching, educating, infusing about their solution, their product. And salespeople ask. But once the selling is finished, once we start to receive those buying signals, the other party's behavior starts to change. Perhaps the questions they start to answer start to alter. That is where the negotiating begins. We cross that line and the selling must stop. And now the negotiation begins. So if that's what salespeople do, what is it that negotiators do? Negotiators question, to gather information, to get inside their head, to understand how they see the deal. They listen for the meaning behind their words. What are they really saying? What's going on inside their head? What does it really mean? Negotiators position to shift expectations before they negotiate, to prepare the ground, to sow seeds. Negotiators use time effectively. They wait for the appropriate moment. They state, they remain in control, because negotiation is a process and you must control and own that process all the way through to the point where you shake their hand. Negotiators think, and they consider and weigh. And negotiators don't ask, they tell. So there's a fundamental difference between selling and negotiating. The problem is if we drag some of those selling behaviors into a negotiation where that demand has already been created, they're giving you some kind of signal that they want to buy, then it can start to make you look weak, like you think your proposals need further promoting, bigging up, explaining, justifying. And if you start to look weak, the other party will start to feel stronger. So to give you an example, if myself and one of you are in a conversation and one of you has stated that you're looking to buy a new pen, and I say, well, that's fantastic. I've got this BreakPoint Black pen here. It's yours for £5. You say, £5? That's ridiculous. That pen's only worth 50p. You flinch. But I might say, well, yes, it's £5, but it's £5 because it's incredibly lightweight. It's strong. It's got a titanium roller ball, which is very durable. It's got 24 kilometers of ink in it, so it's going to last you for a very long time. It was actually developed in partnership with NASA. It's actually able to write in zero gravity upside down. It's an amazing pen, and that's why it costs £5. What am I doing? I'm selling. If I'm so confident that it's worth £5, then I should say it's £5, and then I shut up. And that's the difference. That's what a negotiator would do. When I start promoting and selling and explaining and justifying that price, it can start to make me look weak and the other party feel strong. And this is one of the most common mistakes we see. And of course, talking to salespeople in the SaaS sector, it's absolutely fundamental because there's lots of highly successful, highly effective salespeople. And the temptation is to think that negotiation is about persuading and convincing, but it's not. Negotiation involves much less talking, and it's about getting people to do things. Selling is about convincing them to buy. Negotiation is about getting them to do things, maximizing our power. So, as we've said, selling involves a lot more verbal communication. Negotiation involves a lot more listening and indeed silence. Because how much do you really need to say in a negotiation? Negotiation is silence. Negotiation is listening. It means you're not giving it all away. The temptation is to talk, but when you're talking, you're giving the other party insights into how you're feeling, what you're thinking, your doubts, your concerns. Silence is like a kind of negotiation superpower. It puts you in control. If you can master silence, as uncomfortable as it can be, often the other party feels the need to fill that silence to talk, to start giving you insights into what they're thinking and feeling. Negotiation is silence. Negotiation is listening. How much do you really need to say? Because as I said, everything you say, you're giving away. You're giving them insights into what's going on inside your head. How much do you really need to say? Now, this is a fundamental question. How do we want the other party to feel in that moment when we shake their hand, when we do a deal? How do we want the other party to feel? Any suggestions from the group? Anyone happy to turn their mic on? Any suggestions? How do we want them to feel in that moment when we do the deal?
Trust.
Trust, yes, possibly, sometimes, but that's not the word I'm looking for. It begins with S.
Safe.
No, it's not safe. I'm going to tell you, it is satisfied. We want the other party to feel satisfied. In that moment when we shake their hand, we want them to feel satisfaction. But the way the other party feels about the outcome of the negotiation, it depends on the process we've had to go through, the journey we have taken them through to get to that end result. And it's our job as negotiators to give the other party that sense of satisfaction with the deal. So to give you an example, My sister and her husband recently moved house. And it was a Saturday morning. They're doing the same thing they've done for the last 4 Saturdays. What are they doing? They're scrolling through Rightmove, looking for that dream property. Unfortunately, the property market is tight. There's very little supply. It's disappointing. It's depressing. But hang on a second. What's this house, they say? They call it the estate agent. Predictably, the estate agent is unavailable to show anyone around, but they've got a note on the file. The buyer is happy for them to come over and take a look around the property. So they jump in the car. They drive on over. And they pull up outside. Beautiful frontage. Blue front door. They walk up the path, gravel crunching under their feet. They knock on the door. The door opens. Is that the smell of fresh coffee? Delicious. They walk inside. There's a beautiful parquet floor, polished to a perfect sheen. Open plan living spaces, bifold doors out into a garden, a beautiful kitchen. This has got to be the place. They're already having the barbecues and drinking the Pimm's in their mind. Now, this house in Suffolk is for sale for £500,000, but they've got other ideas. My sister Rebecca walks up to the vendor and says, I'd like to offer you £450,000. You've got a deal, says the vendor. They jump in the car, they drive home, and they're overcome by an uneasy feeling. They feel strange. They don't feel good about the result. It was too easy. I mean, perhaps there was Japanese knotweed in the garden. Maybe there's some kind of planning issues or conditions. There's something not quite right there. They just said yes so easily. Let's think about another way that conversation could have gone. They pull up outside the house, walk up the path, gravel crunching under their feet. They open the door. The smell of fresh bread comes out as the door opens. They walk inside, beautiful timber floors into that huge high ceilings, open plan living space, beautiful marble worktops, open plan doors out into the garden. Beautiful house. They're delighted. The house is for sale for £500,000, but they've got other ideas. I'd like to offer you £450,000. £450,000? Are you joking? Are you mad? Have you any idea about the property market around here? You've got to be wasting my time. I was going to take my son to football practice this morning. They end up going hell for leather for 24 hours, back and forth, exchanging proposals, until eventually they do a deal at £480,000 for the house. They are over the moon. They are overjoyed with satisfaction because people value things they have to work for. So to generate that sense of satisfaction, you need to make the other party work hard for the deal, work hard for those concessions, shift their expectations and slowly build them back up to leave them feeling good and satisfied with that deal, or they just might not shake your hand. So we need to leave the other party feeling satisfied, which means we need to manage the journey and the process we take them from and make them work hard for that deal, make them work hard to achieve things because, and this is a key principle here, generosity engenders greed. If we give things away too easily, hoping the other party will appreciate them, they'll come back to take more and they won't value the things you've given them. So it's critical we remember. We must leave them satisfied. Don't end up like the Rolling Stones. Because it is not about the winning. And I can pretty much guarantee, talking to a group of you, salespeople in the SaaS space, that many of you are highly competitive individuals. It goes with the territory. Highly competitive, target-driven, wanting to beat those around you. But negotiation is not about the winning. It's about giving the other party the symbols of success, letting them feel like they've won, whilst getting the deal that you want on your terms. So you have to manage their perception of the negotiation, allow the other party to feel like they won. You have to watch those competitive instincts. Because if you end up trying to win, sometimes trying to make the other party lose, if it's someone that you clash with, you risk killing the whole deal. You risk causing frustration and resentment. So you need to allow the other party to feel like they have won, leave them feeling satisfied. Now, what is the correct way to negotiate? Sometimes we ask people, how do you negotiate? What's your style? And they might say, well, I like to drive a really hard bargain. I find that that's the best way. I use tough behaviors. I tell them what the bottom line is. I'm firm. And I find that gets the best results. And other people answer that question and say, well, I really find you've got to work on the relationship. You've got to work on trust. You've got to let them feel safe, to use that word. And actually, I find that that leads to the best deals that work for both parties and the creation of lots of value together. And really, for me, relationship, that's the way to do it. But the truth is, there is no single correct one way to negotiate. It depends on the situation. It depends on the circumstances. And we have an adaptive model we call the negotiation compass that makes sense of all of that, informs you of the appropriate way to approach any given negotiation that you're facing. So on the east side of the compass, these are those price focused. In fact, very often price is the only variable. Price focused negotiations, low on trust, low on dependency, short-term outlook. We're looking to maximize the deal in the here and now, take what we can from this deal. If you think of that used car sale as an example, we need to use those tough, cold, hard, firm behaviors. It's a cold, chilled climate to get the best result. As we come down to the south side of the compass, these are negotiations where, yes, price is still important, but now there are some other variables or levers that could be brought into the deal. But in order to identify what those are, some things which are important to us, some things which are important to the other party, we need to start to share a little bit of information, which requires a little bit of trust, a little bit of openness, a little bit of rapport, and we start to warm the climate up. And these deals are not about giving things away to the other party, hoping they'll be nice. No, because generosity engenders greed. It's about trading concessions conditionally, but to create an outcome that both parties can live with. On the east side, we don't care if they can live with it. As we start to come around to the south side, we're trying to create an outcome that both parties can live with. And finally, as we move around to the west side of the compass, this is where we warm the climate and the relationship up even further. This is where we work hard to develop a sense of trust, openness, information sharing, because we're now looking to create deals which build value for both parties, win-win, mutually beneficial outcomes. These deals are inherently more complex. They involve a far broader range of possible variables. And in order to identify what those variables are and understand how we can trade them conditionally, we need to share lots of information, which requires that bedrock of trust and openness. We're looking for those win-win outcomes. If you think about typical SaaS deals, whether that's an initial sale with a new customer or perhaps a renewal, different scenarios may fall in different locations on this compass model. Ideally, with a long-standing customer, with a very valuable, trusting relationship where we're looking to really grow the value and the complexity of the relationship and sell them different services, have a long-term 3, maybe 4-year deal, and all sorts of exchange of value, we hope to be on the west side of the compass. But perhaps the company we're dealing with is in cost-cutting mode. Perhaps procurement has taken over. Perhaps the only thing they care about is getting the price down. And now we're faced with a hard bargaining negotiation. If we bring those relationship building, comfortable, trusting behaviors into that hard bargaining negotiation, chances are we're going to come away with a black eye and a bad deal. So we have to adapt our approach and our behavior accordingly. Now, if you look at this list of words on the screen, you pick 3 of these in your mind that you would hate to be described as. Of course, these are positive words. These are the types of words that would have got you a commendation, a gold star at school, perhaps another helping of dessert with your Sunday lunch. These are positive words. But there's many of these can cause problems or hold you back in your negotiations. And there's one in particular that can cause more problems than any of the others. And that word is fairness, your sense of fairness. Fairness is a complex, subjective area. But the risk is, if we prioritize our sense of fairness and seeking a fair deal, we're exposing ourselves to the risk of somebody who is not prioritizing fairness running us over to get the deal that they want. And if feelings of fairness can get mixed up in a fear of being seen as greedy or being seen as unreasonable, all of those things make us feel uncomfortable. And that discomfort is one of the key factors in negotiation. Negotiation is uncomfortable. It's just a fact. So we have to be careful around these ideals of fairness, and we have to start with protecting ourselves. There's a quote from Machiavelli here: any woman who tries to be good all the time is bound to come to ruin among the great number who are not good. Hence, a princess who wants to keep her authority must learn how not to be good and use that knowledge, or refrain from using it, as necessity requires. So we need to understand that not everybody out there is prioritizing fairness. They may be seeking their own objectives. Of course, we go about our business in a competitive capitalist market. So we cannot rely on the fairness of other people. We need to protect ourselves. There's another list of words here. Pick 3 of these in your mind that you'd love to be described as. These are bad words. These are the words that would have got you in trouble at school, perhaps got you a detention, sent to bed early with no pudding. Slightly unattractive words. But sometimes some of those behaviors might be appropriate in a negotiation to help you get what you want or protect yourself. So when we look at these lists of words again, the list on the left, these are the values of society. The list on the right, these are negotiation behaviors. And these negotiation behaviors will make you feel uncomfortable because of the way in which they clash with your social values, who you are as a person inside. But I'm not asking you to be someone different. I'm just asking you to perhaps consider doing something different when you enter that negotiation. It's like putting a jacket on. You walk into that negotiation, you put on your negotiation behaviors. You're still you inside, you're still the same person. I can't change that. Nobody else can change who you are. But sometimes you need to put on that suit of armor to protect yourself from some of the things you may see in a negotiation. But that can be, as I said, uncomfortable, and overcoming and managing that discomfort is fundamental to your success as a negotiator. So we're talking about a behavioral shift. Like an iceberg, you've got what's going on below the surface, inside of you, what you think, what you feel, who you are as a person, your purpose, identity, values, beliefs, and capabilities. But on the surface, above the surface, what you say, what you do, that behavioral veneer that is sometimes appropriate to get the best deal. And of course, we do this all the time in small ways when we come to work, but perhaps not the same persona that we might be in the pub on a Friday night with our friends. We manage what we present and what we show of ourselves. So negotiation is about that behavioral control and that awareness, that conscious awareness and choice of behaviors that are appropriate. When we go back to that negotiation compass model, depending on where we are on that compass, the types of behaviors that we should use. True or false? Each party tends to credit the other party in a negotiation with more bargaining power than it really has. What do you think?
True.
It is true. We tend to credit the other party with more power than they truly have. And we see that time and time again in our work at BreakPoint Black, and there's plenty of studies that show that as well. So why is that? Well, if we think about you at work approaching a negotiation, let's take a look inside your head. There's lots going on. You've got competition at work, the targets you're seeking to hit, perhaps quarterly, annual targets, the risks and the challenges that you've got to hitting those targets, your own performance review, your reputation as a performer that you're seeking to maintain and improve on a continual basis, the problems you've got to solve daily, weekly, deadlines you've got to hit, your motivation to meet those deadlines, to overcome the pressure, and of course, get those rewards, those incentives. And you've got your ego in there, feelings of stress, self-doubt sometimes, sense of empowerment that varies, and all of your behaviors. But if you think about a deal that you've got coming up, a negotiation that you are about to embark upon, think about the key contact on the other side, the person you're negotiating with. What's going on inside their head? Of course, It's all the same stuff. They're under pressure. They've got competition. They've got targets they've got to meet. They're trying to get their bonus, their rewards. They're concerned about their reputation they have to uphold. They've got a sense of motivation to hit those deadlines, to hit those targets. They've got doubts, stresses. All of those things are going on inside their head as well. But the reason why we tend to overestimate the power of the other party is because we focus on our doubts, our concerns, our fears, everything that's going on inside our head. But the negotiation, it takes place inside their head, inside the head of the other party. That's where the negotiation takes place. So it's your job as negotiators to get inside their head. How do we do that? We do that by gathering information, because information is power. We're going to come on to that in a moment. So in order to really understand the balance of power in a negotiation, i.e., how does our level of power compare to theirs, there are lots of factors that we need to consider, lots of information we need to gather as negotiators. Firstly, the level of dependency they have on us and our product. If you think about some of your customers, how dependent is their business on your product? How woven into their strategy and their objectives is your service offering? If they have a high level of dependency, what does that mean for your power in your next renewal or indeed in a new sale? History and precedent. If it's an existing relationship, what has gone before? Have you had technical difficulties, problems that have occurred that they're using as a stick to beat you with? How does that affect the balance of power? Do you have strong personal relationships with individuals in that organization? How can you bring those to bear to help you get what you want? What do time pressures do? Because power is not a constant. It varies over time. If you're approaching the end of your quarter, or perhaps you're approaching that renewal date, how does that affect the balance of power? If it's going to take them 3 months to find an alternative system, if they want to rip yours out and replace it with something else, then as you start to enter that 3-month period and you get 1 month away from your end of contract, what does that mean for the power balance? Perhaps it's in your favor. Market conditions, broader circumstances, the financial performance of the business, their ability to pay. Are they hiring and expanding? Have they just done a cap raise? Or are they firing and shrinking? The power of a brand. What does your brand say about your level of power? And also, of course, what does your personal brand say about your level of power? When you walk into a room, into a negotiation, does your personal brand, your title give you authority, or perhaps less so? Is it a specialist product with lots of unique features and capabilities, or is your product starting to become more of a commodity with many other competitors? So when we're trying to evaluate the balance of power, we need to look at all of these and assess the level of power, and this requires lots of information gathering. How much do we really know about how important, how dependent they are on our product? What are we learning from the users, from the business reviews, from the level of engagement that we're getting in the data that's coming back in the use of that SaaS product? So in a negotiation, information is quite literally power. So we want to gather it by playing the detective, questioning, listening, asking questions to get inside their head and understand what's going on inside their world. Then we can build our power. Equally, conversely, the opposite is true. Talking and arguing give power away. So you have to be careful. You have to moderate the information that you're giving, particularly as you start to approach a key negotiation, because everything you say has a bearing on their perception of the balance of power, on how desperate you are to close this deal, perhaps how much pressure you're under to secure this deal, to get this sale, to hit your target. Information is power. We want to build our power by gathering information. We have to be careful about giving it away. So we've got a short session today, but I'd like to give you an overview of a key planning framework that we use at BreakPoint Black, which is universal to prepare for any given negotiation. We call it the 4 Ps planning framework. So it's made up of positioning, people, power, and process. Let's have a quick whistle-stop tour of the 4 Ps. So we'll start off with positioning. Positioning is the actions and statements, the communication that you make, that you use before you negotiate to try to increase your power and to shift the other party's expectations. So it's about sowing seeds in their mind to set their expectations about what to expect from the deal. Positioning takes time. And so as we run up to a sale, it's worth remembering that everything we've done to set expectations with the other party about price, contract term, features, what they're going to get in terms of discount, it all factors into what they expect from your first proposal and how that proposal is received. So positioning is about creating a sense of inevitability about something. Just drip, 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 sowing those seeds in till it starts to take shape and blossom in their mind and they start to move to a point of acceptance. When we look at people, it's critical to remember that we negotiate not with companies, not really, because it's always people sitting across the table or the Zoom screen from us. We negotiate with people and we have to get inside their heads to understand how they see this deal. What are their doubts, fears, concerns, pressures, targets? What does that mean for their decision-making calculus for this negotiation? Do we understand which people are going to be involved and are going to have a bearing on the outcome of this negotiation? Are we in contact with all of those people? What do we know about their personality? What do we know about how they're likely to react to different behavioral inputs from us? What do we think they will be trying to find out? Do we want to tell them? Do we not want to tell them? So this is all about understanding specifically the people we are negotiating with. Power. As I said, information is power. What information do we need to collect? Where can we get it from? What is there online? What is there on the company's website? How many jobs do they have live? What's their financial statement saying? How's the business performing? What are we finding out from the user base about how they plan to, if it's a new sale or if it's a current customer, how are they using our product? What can we find out from our customer success team about the usage and the applications of the product and what it's doing and how it's involved and intertwined in their strategy as a business? What is the level of dependency, as I touched upon? Who has what BATNAs? Best alternative to a negotiated agreement, i.e., what alternative options do they have? If they've got very credible, comparable alternative options, which may be cheaper or less expensive, or maybe they offer other features, what does it mean for the balance of power? If we've got high levels of integration of our software into their business, with lots of bespoke integrations, APIs, perhaps it makes it more sticky. Perhaps that increases our power. So we need to weigh up all of these factors to look at the balance of power. And finally, the process. This is what wraps the whole thing together. Long before we negotiate, we think about what research do we need to carry out? What information do we need to gather? What is our break point? That's our worst case scenario walk-away point. What are the chosen trading variables? Yes, price. Yes, contract term. Yes, something about features. But what else is there? Those are the most obvious ones. Typically, with all of our SaaS customers, there are many, many other variables that can be brought into the deal when we start to get more creative and we're able to move around to the west side of the compass. But in order to do that, there's a process that we teach at BreakPoint Black to identify what those variables are and to consider how we can use them and trade them conditionally to create a valuable outcome that works for both parties. And then, of course, what are our moves? What's our opening position? And what are our moves? What are our proposals? And we plan all the way to the end. Negotiation is 90% planning and preparation. You need a plan that takes you all the way through to the end. It's a process, it's a method. It doesn't involve flying by the seat of your pants, using your wits and your instincts. So, 10 things to think about. Negotiators do not sell. They are not their feelings. Yes, you feel things, but you have to put those feelings to one side. Choose your behaviors to manage the feelings of the other party. It's not about your feelings. Negotiators evaluate and exercise power. They take charge. They remain in control. They consciously deliver satisfaction by making the other party work hard to achieve things so that they can value what they get. They're chameleons. They adapt their behavior depending on where they are on the negotiation compass and the type of negotiation they are facing. They choose where and when to build trust deliberately to support more complex, mutually beneficial negotiations. They look for low-cost, high-value trades Not enough time to really go into that today, but this is about sniffing out things that are low cost to give and high value to receive, and understanding how we can trade those items conditionally. They anticipate the moves of the other party, and they are always prepared. Negotiation is 90% planning and preparation. So very briefly, we're hoping to do another masterclass session probably early next year. I'm just going to give you a quick overview of some of the themes that I'd like to talk about, and perhaps get you thinking about some of these things in your own world. So when we look at an initial sale in the SaaS space, the sales team is there, and of course they're working with their sales process to generate that demand. They're negotiating the terms of that initial deal with the customer, and of course setting a precedent from that first deal, perhaps the discount, the contract term, the features, all the other bells and whistles that are involved in that deal. Common problems that we're going to explore next time. Overestimating the power of the other party, sometimes giving away excessive discounts just to try to get that deal over the line. But of course, now setting a precedent for all future renewals. Making unconditional concessions, giving things away for free. Remember, generosity engenders greed, and missing the opportunity for value exchange, sometimes damaging the perception of the product's value or worth. And not always gathering and analyzing negotiation relevant information, and structuring it, organizing it, and storing it in a way that both the sales team can use in the future, as can the account management team when it comes to renewal. And in the contract renewal cycle, of course, we've got account management, sales, and customer success all playing different roles depending on the company structure. But account management, of course, running the relationship there, and they are planning and executing those contract renewals. Sales team perhaps running the upsells and the expansion at renewal very often, and negotiating perhaps the terms of those upsells or expansion. And customer success playing that role, working with the users on the engagement with the product, hopefully trying to get higher levels of engagement and dependency on the product, building the power and the dependency on your service. So all of these roles have a key part in the negotiation process. Depending on the company, it varies from one firm to another. Some common problems we're going to discuss next time: lack of planning and execution process, which can lead to a lack of alignment between those teams. So the left hand's not talking to the right hand, and this can undermine negotiating power. Perhaps one department saying one thing, another saying another. They're all trying to meet their own targets. As I said, misaligned internal incentive schemes, different targets, leading to sometimes exposing behaviors between teams around renewal and upsell. And finally, a lack of coordinated, methodical negotiation information gathering. Information is power. So across those three teams, you need to be understanding the relevance and the importance of information, and understanding how you can collect it and work together and feed it into a central repository. Thank you very much for listening. My name is Guy Johnson, founder of BreakPoint Black. It's been a pleasure to speak to you all today, and please do get in touch if you'd like to find out a little bit more about anything we've discussed today.
Thank you very much, Guy. I mean, it's fascinating how much depth there is to the negotiation once you've actually managed a sales process, and you're at the point that a prospect is ready to buy. I think there's a couple of questions coming in the chat if we've got a couple of minutes. So I think, Tamir, you've got a question if you want to ask that. I'm curious to know how you assess that you're at the right level of an individual to have the negotiation with someone. You know, I've seen in the past kind of like managing larger kind of multi-stakeholder SaaS deals that you can kind of get an individual putting pressure on you to start negotiating on the proposal when they are not the actual decision maker. Like, how do you manage that when, you know, someone starts a negotiation and they're not the person you should or need to be negotiating with?
Yeah, it's a good question. So mapping the empowerment level of different individuals that we're dealing with is a key part of that planning process. And of course, it's important to remember that anything we're saying to one individual in that organization, whether that's starting to hint at levels or terms or prices or any other features of the contract, is going to feed through most likely to other individuals and key decision makers in the organization. And this is a tricky aspect for salespeople in particular, because of course in that sales process they are communicating all sorts of things in an effort to secure the sale. But of course, anything you've said, anything you've hinted at in terms of levels is going to shift and manage the expectations of the other party when it actually comes to negotiating the deal. So it's having that awareness, that consciousness of everything we're saying. And yes, we've got to focus on securing the sale, but remember and keep track of what you said in terms of indications about how the deal might look, because it's going to feed into their expectations further down the line. Equally, just to sort of really focus on your question about empowerment, we do need to try to ensure that we are dealing with that key decision maker. And perhaps when it comes to the point of negotiation, they may be looking to try to secure a better deal for themselves. If we feel that there are more senior people on their side that we need to involve in the negotiation, well, that's a negotiation in itself, how you negotiate with the person you're in contact with in order to bring other people into the deal. And perhaps, and this is where this idea of conditionality, opening up conversations about discounts or about changing the shape of the agreement, make that conditional on them bringing certain people in from their side. So we don't just have to acquiesce and give them what they want. We can identify and realize what we have as leverage in terms of reshaping the deal and use that to bring key people into the discussion.
That's helpful. Yeah, very interesting. Tamir, do you want to ask your question?
Yes, if you can hear me, because I keep getting this like unstable internet connection thing. But first of all, guys, thank you so much for sharing all of that. It's been really useful. And similarly to what James said, I have never ever thought this in depth about negotiations, so that was really quite an eye-opener. But so here at my company where we currently work, just for a bit of context, the ACV of the sale is fairly small, so we don't really get into the larger negotiations. However, we do have like a very strict policy where I basically cannot offer any discount unless it's in exchange for like co-marketing activities or like a sign within this month. Like it has to be every single time in exchange for something from the customer. I just wanted to get your thoughts on that, if that's like a standard thing or if there is such a like a negotiation without getting an exchange.
I'm very encouraged to hear that. Really, ideally, we never want to give anything away for free. Any concession you make is an opportunity to trade that for something in return. So it's fantastic that your company has that mindset and has that policy. If we are in a pure single variable negotiation and the only variable, and this is actually quite rare, really, the only variable, let's say, is price, the only variable out of negotiation, then it becomes about maximizing our power to take as much of the pie of that bargaining range as we can for ourselves. And that's what we describe as a distributive negotiation. There's a finite amount of value. If I gain a pound, you lose a pound, and vice versa. And therefore, there's a slightly different approach to what that type of hard bargaining negotiation. But in general, in the world of SaaS, typically, as you point out, and as your company points out, there are a range of other variables that can be brought in. And therefore, why should we ever give anything away for free? If we're going to give a discount, let's get something in return. And one of the things that we look at and that we go into a lot of depth in our training programs is understanding not only the value of items to receive, but also the cost of concessions to give. And in that information gathering process, as we approach negotiation, it's about identifying the whole universe of different variables that we could bring into the deal that could be traded conditionally in the way that you've described. But also, yes, we know how much certain things, the value certain things have for us to receive, but how much is it costing the other party to give us those things? And if we're going to make a concession, if we give them a discount on price, well, it costs us the same amount to give that discount as it does for them to receive it. You know, a pound is worth a pound, a dollar is worth a dollar. But there'll be other concessions that we might be able to make. Perhaps, for example, payment terms. Let's say we've got a healthy balance sheet, but not, you know, under any undue pressure in terms of financial pressures within the business. Therefore, we can afford to accept longer payment terms or more flexible payment terms. Depending on your customer's financial position, that might be extremely valuable to them, and it may not cost you so much to give. So when we start to look at this trading of concessions, we're looking at the differential between value to receive and cost to give, and identify ideally we're trying to sniff out those low cost, high value trades. Hope that
Yeah,
helps.
that's really good way. Yeah, no, really good actually. It's a good way to look at it, like a pound for a pound, so you're not getting like a pound for 20p from either side. So it's like an equal trade, which I really like that outlook.
Yeah, an equal trade if it's something that's equally valuable. But as I say, ideally we're trying to find those opportunities where there's something that they might be able to give us that doesn't cost them very much, but it's very valuable to us, and perhaps there's something we can give them in return that doesn't cost us very much, but it's very valuable for them to receive.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks for the question.
Guy, I'm just mindful of time. So what I'll do is I'll gather, you can pick questions into the chat in Circle, and then I can summarize those over to Guy if there's further clarification. And then Guy's also going to be doing the second part, as he highlighted, in early January. So we're keeping an eye out for that. But really appreciate your contribution today, Guy. Thank you. As you're aware, we're kind of in our infancy with the membership, but this is the type of quality content that we want to give people access to when they join. So thank you for the value add. And I know you want to catch up with myself, so just let me know later in the week when you can speak and we can have a chat.
Absolutely. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much for giving an hour of your time to join. And I hope to see you all in the next session in the new year. We're going to be really digging into some of the SaaS specific features of negotiation. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Cheers, Guy.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.